Are you tired of the constant conflict in your relationship? Have you had it with the hurt feelings, the yelling and the screaming and the slammed doors, the icy coldness between the two of you that lasts way too long, and things aren't getting better on their own? Hi, my name's Emil Harker. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I've been doing therapy for almost 20 years. I've created a program called You Can Turn Conflict into Closeness, and today I'm going to teach you the 3 skills to take the nitty-gritty of conflict and actually turn it into closeness. My mission is to make 1 million marriages more amazing. It's my passion. It's what I do. At the end of this video or podcast or webinar or whatever you want to call it, I'll send you the outline summary of this presentation. So that way you can print off and read it and apply these skills and strategies so that you become ninja skilled in dealing with conflict. There are 2 main reasons for putting this podcast together. First, I want to make sure that you guys have the skills that you need to deal with the inevitable conflict that happens in relationships. And secondly, I want you to know where to go to find more information and training on how to make your marriage more amazing. This presentation is for the nitty-gritty of the conflict. It's when you're in the situation of conflict that these skills I'm going to teach you are going to be really helpful. I call it the 3 most powerful secrets to turn conflict into closeness. Now, the 3 secret skills are actually 3 responses to the 4 statements in conflict. That's right, there's only 4 statements in conflict. Consider how fantastic that is. Only 4 statements. Knowing this will help you sort through what seems like random slashing and clashing of words and phrases and demystifies conflict. The 4 statements in conflict are these. First, criticisms. Second, questions. Third, declarations. And finally, fourth, commands. A criticism is a statement about you or your behavior. For example, you never help out around the house, or you didn't take out the garbage, you're always late. If the statement starts with the word you, it's probably a criticism. The next statement in conflict is a question. Now, a question is a statement requesting information. For example, hey, why didn't you take out the garbage this morning? Hey, what took you so long to come home? So a question is a request for information. Now, the third statement in conflict is a declaration. A declaration is a statement about the person speaking or a general description of the situation. For example, I've had it, or this isn't working. We are going in circles. If the statement starts with the word I or we or this, it's probably going to be a declaration. Finally, the 4th statement in a conflict is a command. A command is a statement telling you to do something. Grow up. Leave. Be quiet. So it's telling you to do something. So there you have it. There are only 4 statements in conflict. Now let's talk about the 3 responses, because the 3 responses to the 4 statements in conflict are the 3 secret skills you need to turn conflict into closeness. First, let's look at responding to criticisms. The normal response to a criticism is to get defensive and either explain yourself. For example, I didn't have time, which usually comes across as an excuse, or you point out how the other person is misinformed. Okay, like you would say something, well, obviously you don't know because I've already done it. You haven't even checked, which usually comes across as an excuse, okay? Or sometimes we do a diversionary counter-criticism. For example, I can't believe you're jumping on my case. You do the same thing, and I don't complain. Without being a social scientist, you can tell right away that no matter how right you might be, the person who's being critical isn't going to soften and apologize with those responses. So instead of responding the normal way with defensiveness, which doesn't work, I want you to do something completely unnatural that does work. I want you to listen for and respond only to the element of truth in the criticism. That's right. When you hear a criticism, okay, a statement that is about you or your behavior, I want you to focus in on what is true about the criticism. And imagine a scale from 0 to 100%, where 0 is not true at all and 100 is like completely true. And you have this scale in your mind. So when you get this criticism, you identify where that would fit on the line of truth. So if the criticism is like 100% true, I want you to use words like, "You're absolutely right. I do that all of the time. That's totally true." Now, if it's less than 100%, let's say it's like 70%, you could use words like "most of the time," or "more often than not," or "a majority of the time." If it's around 50% of the time, you could use words like "several," or "most," or "much," or "many." If it's around the 25% mark, you could use words like "sometimes," or "recently," or "lately." Now, if it's less than 10%, you could use words like "in the past," or "there have been times," or "this particular time." If it's close to 0, or you think it's closer to 0, and the criticizer thinks it's much higher, you can use words like "appear," "comes across," "seems like," "looks like." Now, I warn you, if you overuse this statement, it's the same thing as saying that you think the other person's an idiot, because it's in their perspective, okay? So use this sparingly and only at the right time. Now you can see how when I use this scale from 0 to 100%, the responses of agreeing with the truth, I use words and phrases that kind of capture or measure the amount of truth in it. Because there are times when someone's frustrated and critical and they use words like "always" and "never." And if we get caught up into this debate or argument about whether or not "always" and "never" should be used in conflict, well, that is a moot point. That is a futile conversation to have, because "always" and "never" will remain a part of the dialogue in conflict. So when we hear "always" and "never," we just take those words out and replace the period of the statement with an exclamation point. So that's how you respond if the criticism ranges between 0 and 100%. Now, what do you do if it's 0% true? I mean, like totally not true. If it's 0% true, I just want you to ask, well, what do you mean? When you ask the question, what do you mean? This compels the person being critical to reevaluate what they're saying. And it forces them to be more specific, or it helps them kind of tone it down a little bit, take the edge off. All right? So let's use an example. "You never help around the house." All right, now I might evaluate that this is about 30% true. So I might say something like, "You know, you do way more than me around the house, that's for sure. And when I am home, I don't help out with the cleaning, like the major cleaning, like the bathrooms or the laundry, the vacuuming, or any other major chores around the house. So I can totally see why you would say that I don't help around the house." Now notice, I didn't get into the "never" or the "always." I just ignored that. So whatever is true, I agree to, I'm accountable to. I'm going to be specific, I'm going to own it, and I'm going to own it without apology. Now, when you own it without apology, that doesn't mean be proud about it. You just accept it with accountability. All right? So the first secret skill is responding to criticisms by agreeing with the element of truth. Nothing more, nothing less. All right. So that brings us to the second secret skill in turning conflict into closeness, and that is responding to the questions. Now, a question is a statement requesting information. Now, depending on the emotional temperature of the person who is asking the question, you either answer the question, that's if they're kind of chill, or you ask a question to them to see if they really want to know. And all you say is, do you really want to know? So if they're really spicy and upset and still on that edge, then in that moment, they're really not able to hear what you're saying. So when you ask the question, hey, do you really want to know? It forces them to think, do they really want to know? And that kind of softens them, just to takes them down a notch so they can hear you when they say, well, yeah, that's why I asked the question. And then you go ahead and answer the question. But sometimes in questions, you get a loaded question. And a loaded question is a question with assumptions in it. When we get those loaded questions, we need to split that question into two different statements. So here's an example. Why are you ignoring me? Okay, notice, that's a question, but it's assuming that I am ignoring my spouse. But let's say I'm really not ignoring my spouse. So I might respond with, hey babe, help me understand what you're saying. Are you asking me a question, or are you telling me that you're upset? Now, if you ask this, here's what will most likely happen. In their frustration, they're probably just going to say both. Well, that's okay, because at least you're taking control and you're staying in the driver's seat on the conversation. So the response you're most likely going to get is, well, both. Now, we can predict this, so we're going to be prepared for it. And since I'm really not ignoring her, but I'm just preoccupied with something, I might respond like this. Hey, I can see how it seems like I'm ignoring you, because I really haven't been as warm and talkative like I normally am, and I can see how that feels like I'm ignoring you. Then you move on to the answer to the question that she had. I'm just preoccupied with some things that need to be done at work. Or if that's not the case, I might say something like, I'm just pouting because I got my feelings hurt from something that happened last night. Now, first, you acknowledge the truth to the criticism, okay? And then if they're asking a question, you deal with the question second. The criticism is always the trump. So if you ever get a few statements and one of them is a criticism, you just go with the criticism, all right? Criticisms trump everything. Now, when people are critical and you really want to explain yourself, when I talked about how to respond to criticisms, I said, agree with the truth, nothing more, nothing less, okay? Do not give in to the temptation for an explanation. The time to explain yourself is when the person who's being critical asks a question. Because when they ask a question, now they're opening up their mind to hear what you have to say. A premature explanation will come across as an excuse. Let me say that again. A premature explanation will come across as an excuse. So the second secret skill is responding to questions strategically. You answer the question if they're reasonable, or you ask a question, do you really want to know, if they're a little bit spicy. Now, the third and fourth statements in conflict have the same response, okay? So that way you get a 2-for-1 deal. And this brings us up to the third and final secret skill to turn conflict into closeness. Now, the third statement in conflict is a declaration. A declaration is a statement about how the person feels, how the speaker feels, or a general statement about the situation. For example, I've had it, or this isn't working. We are going in circles. Now, the fourth statement in conflict is a command. A command is a statement telling you to do something, like grow up, leave, be quiet, okay? Whether the statement is a declaration or a command, the response is still the same, okay? What you do is you capture the emotion or the attitude, and then you verbalize it. That's it. So, for example, you might say something like, it seems like you're really frustrated or surprised. And to make the response easier for you to remember, all I want you to do is start your statement with, it seems like you're really, and then you fill in the blank with whatever emotion or attitude they have. And you don't have to be too creative, because chances are the emotions that they're going to be experiencing are frustrated, upset, disappointed, hurt, and the attitudes that they might have would be certain or confused or surprised. And so you just listen to what they say, and then you kind of go, okay, which emotion or attitude would best match that statement? And then you verbalize it, all right? I can see that you're really angry, all right? I can see that you're really frustrated. Notice how you first identify the emotion the person is expressing, and then you connect it to what they experienced. You don't have to agree or validate what they're experiencing. All you have to do is show that you understand what they're experiencing. That's where the magic is. So let's summarize. There are only 4 statements in conflict: criticisms, questions, declarations, and commands. If you get a criticism, you listen for and respond to the element of truth. Nothing more, nothing less. If it's a question, you either answer the question or you ask them if they really want to know. And if it's a declaration or a command, you capture their emotion or attitude and you verbalize it. It's that simple. So here's my question to you. Are you going to settle for a good enough marriage, or do you want something more? To have an extraordinary marriage does not require extraordinary effort. It just requires effort with the right information. And I know what it takes to make an amazing marriage. If what you just heard resonated with your soul and inspired you to do something, to dig a little deeper to make your marriage more amazing, if you want to know how to avoid getting your feelings hurt in the first place, or if you want to communicate in such a way that your partner actually appreciates you sharing your thoughts, feelings, opinions, and preferences, if you want to learn how to communicate in such a way that you actually come to a resolution, then call the phone number on the screen or fill out the information, and we'll have someone talk to you about the Marriage Transformation Program. Because I want your marriage to be another success story.